Okay, today is the 30th of July, and we are on the Kassapa Samyutta. We come to Sutta 16.4, as Savatthi, Buddha said, monks, what do you think? What kind of monk is worthy to be a visitor of families? And what kind of monk is not worthy to be a visitor of families? Noble Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One. And the Blessed One said, monks, a monk might approach families with the thought, may they give to me, not hold back. May they give me much, not a little. May they give me fine things, not shabby things. May they give me promptly, not slowly. May they give me considerately, not casually. When a monk approaches families with such a thought, if they do not give, he thereby becomes hurt. On that account he experiences pain and displeasure. If they give little rather than much, or if they give shabby things rather than fine things, or if they give slowly rather than promptly, or if they give casually rather than considerately, he thereby becomes hurt. On that account he experiences pain and displeasure. Such a monk is not worthy to be a visitor of families. Monks, a monk may approach families with the thought, when among others' families, how could I possibly think, may they give to me, not hold back. May they give me respectfully, not casually, etc. When a monk approaches families with such a thought, if they do not give, or if they give gradually, etc., he does not thereby become hurt. He does not on that account experience pain and displeasure. Such a monk is worthy to be a visitor of families. Monks, Kassapa approaches families with such a thought. When among others' families, how could I possibly think, may they give to me, not hold back, may they give respectfully, etc. If they do not give, or if they give casually, etc., he does not thereby become hurt. He does not on that account experience pain and displeasure. Monks, I will exhort you by the example of Kassapa, or one who is similar to Kassapa. Being exhorted, you should practice accordingly. It's the end of the sutta. You see here, the Buddha is quite detailed in his teaching. He things like this, most people would not think about it. The Buddha is very particular that the Sangha has a good reputation. So even small details like this, he teaches the monks that when they go and beg for their food also, what they think is important. If they have a greedy thought, if they have an arrogant thought, then they may become hurt when they should not. So Buddha is teaching them to practice to the finest details. The next sutta, 16.5. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajya Gaha in the bamboo grove, the spiritual sanctuary. Then the venerable Kassapa approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, you are old now, Kassapa, and those worn-out hempen rag robes must be burdensome for you. Therefore you should wear robes offered by householders, Kassapa, accept meals on invitation, and dwell close to me. Let's stop here for a moment. This Venerable Kassapa, and the Buddha, I think, was about 80 years old. I think Venerable Kassapa, according to some books, was about 120 years old or something like that. He was much older than the Buddha. And he was very ascetic, even up to the very end, which is quite rare. Normally monks are ascetic in their younger days, then as they grow older, they tak boleh tahan. Because the ascetic ways are a bit taxing. When your body is old, you find it very difficult to practice some of the ascetic practices, like sleeping in the forest. In my younger days, I also slept in the forest. We just put a plastic sheet, put your umbrella, you look for 2 branches to hang your rope, And after that, you put your umbrella. Then your umbrella, the height should be such that the top of the umbrella is just your eye level. For me, about 5 feet. So that when you sit under the umbrella, you just don't knock the top of your head, so you can sit in meditation. And then you want it to be low so that when you lie down to sleep at night, the mosquito net can stretch far. If you put it too high, when you sleep at night, your mosquito net cannot open up. So not only that, your mosquito net, you have to be careful to put it under something under the plastic sheet or under some material, otherwise the snake will crawl inside. When you are young, you can sleep on the bare floor like this. But after about 45 years old, you will find a bit difficult because after 45 years old, my experience was that body heat becomes much less. So when the wind blows, it goes into your bones. But Kassapa, so old, he was still staying in the forest and wearing rag robes, refused to accept offerings of new robes by lay people, and also he only ate his meal from arms round and refused to go to a house invitation or to a monastery to eat. And then he said, "For a long time, Venerable Sir, I have been a forest dweller and have spoken in praise of forest dwelling. I have been an alms food eater, and I have spoken in praise of eating alms food. I have been a rag robe wearer, and have spoken in praise of wearing rag robes. I have been a triple robe user," that means one set only, "and have spoken in praise of using the triple robe. I have been a few wishes, and have spoken in praise of fewness of wishes. I have been content, and have spoken in praise of contentment. I have been secluded, and have spoken in praise of solitude. I have been aloof from society, and have spoken in praise of aloofness from society. I have been energetic, and have spoken in praise of arousing energy." Stop here for a moment. So you see, all these very good practices which not many monks have the willpower to practice. Then the Buddha asked, "Considering what benefit, Kassapa, have you long been a forest dweller? Have you long been an alms food eater? Have you long been a rag robe wearer, etc., and spoken in praise of them?" And then he said, "Considering two benefits, Venerable Sir, for myself I see a pleasant dwelling in this very life, and I have compassion for later generations, thinking, may those later generations follow my example. For when they hear, the enlightened disciples of the Buddha were for a long time forest dwellers and spoke in praise of forest dwelling. For a long time they have been alms food eaters and spoken in praise of eating alms food. For a long time they have been rag robe wearers, etc., and spoken in praise of these practices. And then they will practice accordingly, and that will lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time. Considering these two benefits, Venerable Sir, I have long been a forest dweller, etc., and have spoken in praise of these ascetic practices." And the Buddha said, Good, Kassapa. You are practicing for the welfare and happiness of the multitude, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of devas and humans. Therefore, Kassapa, wear worn-out hempen rag robes, walk for alms, and dwell in the forest. That's the end of the sutta. You see here, the Venerable Kassapa says he sees two benefits of dwelling in the forest and practicing all these ascetic practices. He says, one, he has a pleasant dwelling in this very life. He feels comfortable. This staying in the forest, if you are not used to it, it takes a lot of effort to get used to it, because initially if a monk stays alone, his mind may be distracted, disturbed by a lot of things, so he may not be used to having nobody to speak to and all that. So it takes some time to get used to it, but once the monk gets used to it, then he likes that type of life. And the second reason, he has compassion for later generations. He's showing this good example so that later generations, when they hear that the enlightened disciples of the Buddha were ascetic practices, were monks who practice ascetic practices, then they will follow this example. In fact, there is another sutta, I've forgotten exactly where the Buddha says the same thing. The Buddha says, even after he has become enlightened, he still spends his time in secluded dwellings away from people, either in the forest or in a cave, etc. Just like our great Ajahn Mun. He says, just because I constantly dwell in the forest, I don't think that I have not become enlightened. He says, even after enlightenment also, he prefers to stay in the forest for two reasons. One is this one, the same reason. The first one, he has a very pleasant dwelling in this very life. And then he gives an amusing example. He says, if he's alone in the forest and he's got to answer call of nature, it's very easy. Anytime he can answer the call of nature, nobody to embarrass him. And then also he has compassion for later generations, because he wants to set this example for people to see that if you want to become enlightened, you want to walk this path out of samsara, you have to go into seclusion. As the Indian saying goes, the holy path is the path of the alone, to the alone, by the alone. So here I want to quote to you the Mahayana Bodhisattva Precepts. I'm familiar with them because I also took the Mahayana Bodhisattva Precepts before. So there are these major precepts and the minor precepts. And in the minor precepts, there's one, number 37. Is the Mahayana Vinaya book by the monk Yen Kiet from Bangkok. So the translation is this, says, a monk who performs the Dutanga practice, living in the forest for religious contemplation, or living or practicing aranyaka, that means seclusion, and stays in a place full of wild animals or in a dangerous locality, commits lahu kapati sin, that means a light offense. So it is in the Mahayana precepts is contradictory to the Buddha's practice. The Buddha says that he himself likes to stay in secluded places and encourages his monks to stay in secluded places. Whereas this Bodhisattva precepts is the opposite, not allowed to practice ascetic practices, not allowed to stay in the forest. It is for these type of reasons that the Buddha always praised Kassapa, because basically the Buddha is also of the same nature. The Buddha practiced all the ascetic practices until there were practically no more ascetic practice for him to practice. It's only later when he realized that many of them are unbeneficial that he gave them up. But still, in spite of so many ascetic practices, there are some that the Buddha encouraged. Actually, to many people they seem ascetic practices, but to the Buddha it is just the middle path. Eating one meal a day, to the Buddha is a middle path, because he has practiced not eating anything at all, or eating one grain of rice a day. So to him is a middle path, or like using one set of ropes only. Triple ropes means one set of three ropes, the upper rope, the lower rope, and the double layer rope, which we use as a blanket. So that one set is the minimum, and the Buddha says monks should be content with that. So for the Buddha that is a middle path, but for a lot of people it seems very ascetic. And then like begging for food, also the Buddha encouraged the monks to beg for food, cut the ego, and not to be fussy about food. Whatever we get, we eat. So, and also give lay people a chance to plant blessings. Because in the Buddha's teachings, a monk is not allowed to stay alone in the deep forest. Because if a monk stays alone in the deep forest, he does not beg for his food. So he does not give lay people a chance to do merit. Like some of the external ascetics, they stay in the deep forest and they feed themselves on the roots and the leaves of plants and fruits and all that, which the Buddha also tried before. So Later, he says, they can stay in the forest as long as they can come out and beg for their food. The next sutta is 16.7. At Rajya Gaha in the bamboo grove. Then the Venerable Kassapa approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, exhort the monks, Kassapa, give them a Dhamma talk. Either I should exhort the monks, Kassapa, or you should. Either I should give them a Dhamma talk, or you should. And Venerable Kassapa said, Venerable Sir, the monks are difficult to admonish now, and they have qualities which make them difficult to admonish. They are impatient and do not accept instruction respectfully. Venerable Sir, for one who has no faith in regard to wholesome states, no sense of shame, no fear of wrongdoing, no energy, and no wisdom, whether day or night comes, only decline is to be expected in regard to wholesome states, not growth. Just as during the dark fortnight, whether day or night comes, the moon declines in color, circularity and luminosity, in diameter and circumference. So too, Venerable Sir, for one who has no faith in wholesome states, no sense of shame, no fear of wrongdoing, no energy and no wisdom, whether day or night comes, only decline is to be expected in regard to wholesome states, not growth. A person without faith, Venerable Sir, this is a case of decline. A person without a sense of shame, this is a case of decline. A person who is unafraid of wrongdoing, who is lazy, unwise, angry, malicious, this is a case of decline. When there are no monks who are exhorters, this is a case of decline. I'll stop here for a moment. So you see, even during the Buddha's time, there were a lot of rotten monks. So when the Buddha asked Venerable Kassapa to teach the monks Dhamma, the Buddha said, either you should teach or I should teach. It shows that the Buddha considers him. If the Buddha is not around, then he should take the Buddha's place. The Buddha has so much trust in him. But he says the monks now are not like before. They are very difficult to instruct. They are not respectful. They have no sense of shame, no fear of wrongdoing, no diligence, and so they keep declining. Then he continued, Venerable Sir, for one who has faith in regard to wholesome states, a sense of shame, fear of wrongdoing, energy and wisdom, whether day or night comes, only growth is to be expected in regard to wholesome states, not decline. Just as during the bright fortnight. This bright fortnight is in the Chinese calendar is Choyat to Sabmla, the 1st to the 15th day of the lunar calendar, when the sun when the moon waxes, becomes brighter and brighter and brighter. That is the bright fortnight. And the waning fortnight is the other one, from the 16th until the 30th day of the lunar calendar, when the moon becomes smaller and smaller, less and less bright. So, just as during the bright fortnight, whether day or night comes, the moon grows in color, circularity and luminosity, in diameter and circumference. So too, Venerable Sir, for one who has faith in wholesome states, a sense of shame, fear of wrongdoing, energy and wisdom, whether day or night comes, only growth is to be expected in regard to wholesome states, not decline. A person with faith, this is a case of non-decline. A person with a sense of shame, this is a case of non-decline. A person who is afraid of wrongdoing, who is energetic, wise, without anger, without malice, this is a case of non-decline. When there are monks who are exhorters, this is a case of non-decline. Good Kassapa. And then the Buddha repeated the entire statement of the Venerable Kassapa. That's the end of the sutta. So towards the end, he says also that if there are monks who are exhorters, that means if there are monks who teach the Dhamma, this is a case of non-decline, and this is a case of progress. So when no monks teach the Dhamma, then the Dhamma will decline. So it's interesting to see here, even when the Buddha was alive and so many arahants were alive, could read the monks' minds and all that, still you have a lot of rotten eggs among the monks. 16.8 at Rajya Gaha in the bamboo grove. Then the Venerable Kassapa approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, "Exhort the monks, Kassapa, give them a Dhamma talk. Either I should exhort the monks, Kassapa, or you should. Either I should give them a Dhamma talk, or you should." And he said, "Venerable Sir, the monks are difficult to admonish now, and they have qualities which make them difficult to admonish. They are impatient and do not accept instruction respectfully." And then the Buddha said, "Just so, Kassapa, in the past, the elder monks were forest dwellers and spoke in praise of forest dwelling. They were alms food eaters and spoke in praise of eating alms food. They were rag robe wearers and spoke in praise of wearing rag robes. They were triple robe users and spoke in praise of using the triple robe. They were of few wishes and spoke in praise of fewness of wishes. They were content and spoke in praise of contentment. They were secluded and spoke in praise of solitude. They were aloof from society and spoke in praise of aloofness from society. They were energetic and spoke in praise of arousing energy." We'll stop here for a moment. So the Buddha also agreed with him. The Buddha said, formerly the monks were forest dwellers and alms food eaters and red robe wearers, etc., and praised these practices. Then the Buddha continued. Then when a monk was a forest dweller and spoke in praise of forest dwelling, when he was alms food eater and spoke of alms food practice, when he was energetic and spoke in praise of arousing energy, etc., the elder monks would invite him to a seat, saying, "Come monk, what is this monk's name? This is an excellent monk. This monk is keen on training. Come monk, here's a seat, sit down." Then it would occur to the newly ordained monks. It seems that when a monk is a forest dweller and speaks in praise of forest dwelling, when he is an alms food eater and speaks in praise of eating alms food, when he is energetic and speaks in praise of arousing energy, etc., the elder monks invite him to a seat and praise him. They would practice accordingly, and that would lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time. But now, Kassapa, the elder monks are no longer forest dwellers and do not speak in praise of forest dwelling. They are no longer alms food eaters and do not speak in praise of eating alms food, etc. They are no longer energetic and do not speak in praise of arousing energy. Now it is the monk who is well known and famous, one who gains robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicinal requisites, that the elder monks invite to a seat, saying, "Come monk, what is this monk's name? This is an excellent monk. This monk is keen on the company of his brothers in the holy life. Come monk, here's a seat, sit down." Then it occurs to the newly ordained monks. It seems that when a monk is well known and famous, one who gains robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines, the elder monks invite him to a seat and praise him. And they practice accordingly, and that leads to their harm and suffering for a long time. If Kassapa, one speaking rightly, could say, "Those leading the holy life have been ruined by those who lead the holy life. Those leading the holy life have been vanquished by those who lead the holy life." It is just thus that one could rightly say this. You see at the end, actually the book here, they write, "Those leading the holy life have been ruined by the ruination of those who lead the holy life. Those leading the holy life have been vanquished by the vanquishing of those who lead the holy life." But I think this is wrong, because there are other suttas which show that the decline of the sasana is due to the monks themselves. The monks themselves, by showing bad example and writing new sutras that never existed before and all these things. Later you'll see under this Samyutta, the Buddha talked about the false Dhamma, that would appear of this. So it is the monks who bring down the sasana. It is also the monks who bring up the sasana. So good monks will bring up the sasana. Evil monks will cause the sasana to decline. In all the span of 2,500 years since the Buddha lived until now, some of our suttas, the discourses have disappeared. But there are some which are found in Theravada, which are not in Mahayana, and there are some, a small amount, which are found in Mahayana, but not found in Theravada. And there's one sutra, seems to be one of the old sutras, which says that the king of the beasts, the lion, is eaten by the worms or what on his body, meaning to say that our sasana, our Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the sasana is ruined by the monks themselves, those who wear the robes, and their behavior is not like the people who are supposed to wear the robes. Here the Buddha is saying that, because here in the first part of the sutta, the Buddha is saying, formerly the monks were ascetic monks, they were forest dwellers, alms food eaters and all that. But nowadays, they are greedy. Instead of praising the ascetic monks, they praise the monks who are famous and get a lot of offerings. And they want to know the monk's name and offer him a seat and all that. And then the younger monks, when they see this, the elder monks respect a famous monk, they will also practice accordingly and want to become famous. And nowadays you can see many monks are like that. Very few monks will want to live in the forest and practice the ascetic practices. So it's very good if more forest monasteries are formed for monks to practice according to original Buddhism. 16.9 at Savatthi, the Buddha said, monks, to whatever extent I wish, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I enter and dwell in the first jhana. This is accompanied by thought. Here it says accompanied by thought and examination. Actually it should be accompanied by thought directed and sustained, with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, enters and dwells in the first jhana. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, I enter and dwell in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is without thought directed and sustained, and has delight and happiness born of concentration, piti and sukha. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, with the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, enters and dwells in the second jhana. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the fading away as well of delight, I dwell equanimous and mindful and clearly comprehending. I experience happiness with the body. I enter and dwell in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he is equanimous, mindful, one who dwells happily. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the third jhana. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure, I enter and dwell in the fourth jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the purification of mindfulness by equanimity. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the fourth jhana. Let's stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, whenever he wishes, he can enter any one of the four rupa jhanas, states of meditative absorption. And he says, Kassapa is also like him. Whenever Kassapa wants, Kassapa also can enter any of the four rupa jhanas, form jhanas. The Buddha continued, monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the complete transcendence of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, I enter and dwell in the base of the infinity of space. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of space. Stop here for a moment. Here now the Buddha is saying that he can enter the first arupa jhana, which is called the base of boundless space. In this state, the mind opens up and becomes like boundless space. And you see the description here is interesting. It says, to attain this state of arupa jhana, he has to have the complete transcendence of perceptions of forms. That means no more paying attention to forms. With the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, that means there's no more sensory impingement. The five senses, he does not. There is no more aware of the five senses. With non-attention to perceptions of diversity, and then he enters that base of the boundless space. So sometimes some meditation teachers say that when you enter the rupa jhanas, the five senses close. Actually, you look at the definition here of the base of boundless space. It is only in arupa jhana. In arupa jhana only the five senses close. The seeing consciousness, hearing, smell, taste and touch only closes at the arupa jhana, base of boundless space. And then the Buddha continued, monks, to whatever extent I wish, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of space, aware that consciousness is infinite, I enter and dwell in the base of the infinity of consciousness. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of consciousness. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of consciousness, aware that there is nothing, I enter and dwell in the base of nothingness. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the base of nothingness. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, by completely transcending the base of nothingness, I enter and dwell in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, by completely transcending the base of neither perception nor non-perception, I enter and dwell in the cessation of perception and feeling. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the cessation of perception and feeling. I'll stop here for a moment. So now here, all the four arupa jhanas, the Buddha says, anytime he wants to, he can enter any of the arupa jhanas, states of formless meditative absorption. Formless meaning the object is no more form, not bounded by forms. The mind opens up. And then even the last one, cessation of perception and feeling. When perception and feeling ceases, consciousness also ceases. Because perception and feeling always comes with consciousness. So when a person enters this state of cessation of perception and feeling, all the six senses stop. It's an extremely high state. If a monk can enter this state, I think it's written somewhere, when he comes out of it, he becomes either an anagamin or an arahant. Because he realizes that the whole world is only within the six senses, six sense consciousness, like a dream like that. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, I wield the various kinds of psychic power. Having been one, I become many. Having been many, I become one. Stop here a moment. That means the body, one body can multiply into many bodies, and many bodies can come back to one. I appear and vanish. I go unhindered through a wall, through a rampart, through a mountain as though through space. I dive in and out of the earth as though it were water. I walk on water without sinking as though it were earth. Stop here for a moment. This is what Jesus Christ also can do. In the Bible, it's stated that Jesus Christ walked on the water. So Jesus Christ also was a great meditator. Seated cross-legged, I travel in space like a bird. With my hand, I touch and stroke the moon and sun, so powerful and mighty. I exercise mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, wields the various kinds of psychic power. Here he says, I exercise mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. Means that the physical human body, the flesh body, can fly as far as the Brahma world. As a maximum. Monks, to whatever this just now what I just read just now, the various types of psychic power, they call this psychokinesis. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the divine ear element, it is purified and surpasses the human. I hear both kinds of sounds, the divine and human, those that are far as well as near. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, with the divine ear element, which is purified and surpasses the human, he hears both kinds of sounds. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, I understand the minds of other beings and persons, having encompassed them with my own mind. I understand a mind with lust as a mind with lust, a mind without lust as a mind without lust, a mind with hatred as a mind with hatred, a mind without hatred as a mind without hatred, a mind with delusion as a mind with delusion, a mind without delusion as a mind without delusion, the contracted mind as contracted, and the distracted mind as distracted, an exalted mind as exalted, and an unexalted mind as unexalted, a surpassable mind as surpassable, and an unsurpassable mind as unsurpassable, a concentrated mind as concentrated, and an unconcentrated mind as unconcentrated, a liberated mind as liberated, and an unliberated mind as unliberated. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, understands the minds of other beings and persons, having encompassed them with his own mind. Stop here for a moment. So, in addition to the various kinds of psychic power, the Buddha says, he and similarly Venerable Kassapa, they have the heavenly ear, can listen to the sounds of humans and as well as spirits, heavenly beings or ghosts and all that. And also he can read other beings' minds, can encompass their minds and know what other beings are thinking. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, I recollect my manifold past abodes, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3 births, 4 births, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 100,000, 100,000 births, many aeons of world contraction, many aeons of world expansion, many aeons of world contraction and expansion thus. There I was so named, of such a clan, with such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such was my lifespan. Passing away from there, I was reborn elsewhere, and there too I was so named, of such a clan, with such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my lifespan. Passing away from there, I was reborn here. Thus I recollect my manifold past abodes with their modes and details. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, recollects his manifold past abodes with their modes and details. Monks, to whatever extent I wish, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, I see beings passing away and being reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and I understand how beings fare on according to their karma thus. These beings who engage in misconduct of body, speech and mind, who reviled the noble ones, Aryans, held wrong view, and undertook actions based on wrong view, with the breakup of the body after death, have been reborn in a state of misery, in a bad destination, in the nether world, in hell. But these beings who engage in good conduct of body, speech and mind, who did not revile the noble ones, who held right view, and undertook action based on right view, with the breakup of the body after death, have been reborn in a good destination in the heavenly world. Thus, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, I see beings passing away and being reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and I understand how beings fare on according to their karma. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, with the divine eye which is purified as it passes the human, sees beings passing away and being reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and he understands how beings fare on according to their karma. Monks, by the destruction of the asavas, in this very life I enter and dwell in the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for myself with direct knowledge. Kassapa too, by the destruction of the asavas, in this very life enters and dwells in the taintless liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for himself with direct knowledge. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see, the Buddha is praising the Venerable Kassapa so much. See, that practically all the attainments that the Buddha has, Venerable Kassapa also has. So he's one of the few monks that the Buddha praised so much. 16.10. On one occasion, the Venerable Kassapa was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then in the morning, the Venerable Ananda dressed, and taking bowl and robe, he approached the Venerable Kassapa and said, "Come, Venerable Kassapa, let us go to the nuns' quarters." And Venerable Kassapa said, "You go, friend Ananda, you are the busy one with many duties." Let's stop here for a moment. You see, the Buddha, after he allowed nuns, allowed women to go forth as nuns, he made certain rules. One of the rules was every 2 weeks, they have to be given some instructions by a senior monk. And the senior monk generally in the Vinaya has to be, if possible, one with 20 vasa, at least, who has taken the higher ordination, 20 years or more. So Venerable Ananda wanted to go and give teaching instructions to the nuns. And he invited Venerable Kassapa to accompany him, because monks cannot go to the nuns' quarters alone. They have to be accompanied by another man. So Venerable Kassapa said, "You go, you are the one with many duties." He doesn't like to do all these, he likes to meditate only, Venerable Kassapa. He doesn't like to do this and do that. The second time, the Venerable Ananda said to the Venerable Kassapa, "Come, Venerable Kassapa, let us go to the nuns' quarters." "You go, friend Ananda, you are the busy one with many duties." The third time, the Venerable Ananda said to the Venerable Kassapa, "Come, Venerable Kassapa, let us go to the nuns' quarters." Then in the morning, the Venerable Kassapa dressed, and taking bowl and robe, went to the nuns' quarters with the Venerable Ananda as his companion. So stop here for a moment. You see, so here, Venerable Kassapa, even though he didn't want to go, but because Venerable Ananda asked him 3 times, then only he complied. When he arrived, he sat down on the appointed seat. Then a number of nuns approached the Venerable Kassapa, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. As they were sitting there, the Venerable Kassapa instructed, exhorted, inspired, and gladdened those nuns with the Dhamma talk, after which he rose from his seat and departed. Then the nun, Tulatissa, being displeased, expressed her displeasure thus: How can Master Kassapa think of speaking the Dhamma in the presence of Master Ananda, the Videhan sage? For Master Kassapa to think of speaking on the Dhamma in the presence of Master Ananda, the Videhan sage, this is just as if a needle peddler would think he could sell a needle to a needle maker. Stop here for a moment. So this nun, Tulatissa, she was a fan of this Venerable Ananda. He thought highly of Venerable Ananda, but didn't like Venerable Kassapa. Later you see why. Because Venerable Kassapa is one of those monks who are very blunt. Doesn't speak ing siu hua, doesn't speak sweet words. Very to the point. Sometimes so much it sometimes hurts people. He is very blunt. So, remember Ananda is different. Remember Ananda is very popular with a lot of women. It's like a very gentleman type. So this nun says, Master Ananda is supposed to be the most knowledgeable on the Dhamma, because remember Ananda is a personal attendant of the Buddha. So wherever the Buddha goes, remember Ananda is the one who is with the Buddha most of the time, second half of the Buddha's ministry. So he has heard most of the suttas more than other monks. So because of that, this nun thought this remember Ananda is should be the Dhamma preacher, not remember Kassapa. So she passed a nasty remark. He said, just like a needle peddler, a person selling needle, want to sell the needle to the needle factory. The Venerable Kassapa overheard the nun Tulakisa making this statement, and he said to the Venerable Ananda, how is it, friend Ananda? Am I the needle peddler and you the needle maker? Or am I the needle maker and you the needle peddler? And then Venerable Ananda was very embarrassed. He said, be patient, Venerable Kassapa. Women are foolish. And then, so we stop here for a moment. You see, this Venerable Kassapa, because his psychic powers very great. He said somewhere else, his psychic power is so great that he cannot hide his psychic power. To hide his psychic power, it will be like a big elephant trying to hide behind a coconut tree. He gave an example somewhere else. So maybe because of his great psychic power, when this nun uttered this statement, immediately he could hear. He got the heavenly ear. He even can hear ghosts speaking. Why can't he hear the nun speaking? So you see the statement he made to the Venerable Ananda, very blunt. He said, friend Ananda, are you the needle peddler or am I the needle peddler? So then after Ananda said, be patient, and he said, hold it, friend Ananda, don't give the Sangha occasion to investigate you further. Stop here for a moment. However, is it, don't give the Sangha occasion to investigate you further. This must have been the time after the Buddha passed away. Because when the Buddha passed away, the Arahants, 500 Arahants, held a meeting to repeat exactly what the Buddha taught, so that they can agree on the words of the Buddha as far as the suttas and the Vinaya are concerned. And after that, they taught other monks to memorize according to this standard format. So on that first Sangha meeting, when the 500 Arahants met, they took the opportunity to criticize Ananda. Why? Because they said, because of a few things. The Buddha did not want to form the order of nuns, And the Venerable Ananda pleaded with the Buddha 3 times to form the order of nuns. And the Buddha, usually after 3 times he will accede. But in this case, even 3 times the Buddha refused. And Venerable Ananda was very stubborn. After that, he pleaded with the Buddha, quoting this Mahapajapati, this lady, the foster mother of the Buddha, who asked the Buddha to start the order of nuns. He said, Venerable Ananda said, this is not an ordinary woman. When your mother died, she looked after you like her own son and all these things. You owe a lot to her. So because of all that, then the Buddha allowed the order of nuns to form. So that was one of the things they found fault with Venerable Ananda. So that's why I say they investigate him. So here this Venerable Kassapa is giving him a warning. Don't give the Sangha occasion to investigate you some more. What do you think, friend Ananda? Was it you that the Blessed One brought forward in the presence of the Bhikkhu Sangha, saying, monks, to whatever extent I wish, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I enter and dwell in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought, directed and sustained with delight and happiness born of seclusion. Ananda too, to whatever extent he wishes, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, enters and dwells in the first jhana. So you see, he's a bit sarcastic here. the Buddha says, Kassapa too can enter and dwell in this. But he says, did the Buddha say Ananda too can dwell in the first jhana? So Venerable Ananda said, no, Venerable Sir. I was the one friend that the Blessed One brought forward in the presence of the monk Sangha, saying, monks, to whatever extent I wish, I enter and dwell in the first jhana. Kassapa too, to whatever extent he wishes, enters and dwells in the first jhana. Similarly, he quoted on the rest of the other attainments which the Buddha said, he can attain and so can Venerable Kassapa. I was the one friend that the Blessed One brought forward in the presence of the Bhikkhu Sangha, saying, monks, by the destruction of the asavas in this very life, I enter and dwell in the taintless liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for myself with direct knowledge. Kassapa too, by the destruction of the asavas in this very life, enters and dwells in the taintless liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for himself with direct knowledge. Friend, one might just as well think that a bull elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits high could be concealed by a palm leaf, as think that my 6 direct knowledges could be concealed. Then the nun, Tulatissa, fell away from the holy life. That means she eventually disrobed. So actually it's very silly for her, because knowing that this Venerable Mahakassapa is an Arahant, he should not be critical of Arahant. So, because she got bad karma, she cannot wear the robe long and disrobe. So you see the way Venerable Mahakassapa speaks is very blunt. You're not used to him and you don't know that he's an Arahant. You get annoyed with him. 16.11. On one occasion, the Venerable Mahakassapa was dwelling in Rajya Gaha in the bamboo grove, the spiritual sanctuary. On that occasion, the Venerable Ananda was wandering on tour in Dakshinagiri together with a large Sangha of monks. On that occasion, 30 monks, pupils of the Venerable Ananda, most of them youngsters, had given up the training and had returned to the lower life. Stop here for a moment. That means 30 monk disciples of Venerable Ananda had disrobed. Venerable Ananda brought a large group of monks touring around. When the Venerable Ananda had wandered on tour in Dakshinagiri as long as he wanted, he came back to Rajya Gaha, to the bamboo grove, the spiritual sanctuary. He approached the Venerable Mahakassapa, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. And the Venerable Mahakassapa said to him, Friend Ananda, for how many reasons did the Blessed One lay down the rule that monks should not take meals among families in groups of more than 3? Stop here for a moment. You see, there is a Vinaya rule that the Buddha laid down that monks should, when they go on alms round, generally you should not have more than 3 monks on alms round. Because you have too many monks on alms round. When lay people come to give food, they find so many monks, they find it difficult to give to so many monks. If they can't give to all the monks, they may feel a bit embarrassed. So the Buddha asked the monks to go on alms round generally 3 groups of 3 or less, not more than 3. And then Venerable Ananda said, the Blessed One laid down this rule for 3 reasons, Venerable Kassapa. For restraining ill-behaved persons and for the comfort of well-behaved monks, with the intention, may those of evil wishes, by forming a faction, not create a schism in the Sangha, and out of sympathy towards families. It is for these 3 reasons, Venerable Kassapa, that the Blessed One laid down this rule. So here he says there are 3 reasons. One is, I mentioned just now, our sympathy towards families, not making it difficult for them. Second one, for restraining ill-behaved persons. That means the monks, if there are too many of them, they tend to misbehave. And for the comfort of well-behaved monks, may those of evil wishes. You see, when you have a group of 4 monks, or more than 4 monks, is considered a Sangha. So when you have too many monks living together, if there's a disagreement and they break up, then you may have more than 4 monks on one side and more than 4 monks on the other side. If this happens, this is called a schism. And when a schism happens, whoever caused that schism creates the most heavy karma, one of the 5 heaviest karmas. He must go down to hell. That's why the Buddha says, for the comfort of well-behaved monks, so that they don't have a schism. Then Kassapa said, then why, friend Ananda, are you wandering about with these young monks who are unguarded in their sense faculties, immoderate in eating, and not devoted to wakefulness? One would think you were wandering about trampling on crops. One would think you were wandering about destroying families. Your retinue is breaking up, friend Ananda. Your young followers are slipping away. But still this youngster does not know his measure. And remember Ananda said, grey hairs are growing on my head, remember Kassapa. Can't we escape being called a youngster by the Venerable Kassapa? Stop here for a moment. So here, Venerable Kassapa is in a way like scolding Venerable Ananda, saying, you are bringing all these young monks who don't know how to guard their sense faculties. They are not moderate in eating. They are not devoted to wakefulness. That means they are not practicing very hard. And going around trampling other people's crops, people's veggie and all that. And you are destroying families, meaning you are making it very difficult for families to support the monks because you have such a big group of monks, maybe a few hundred. So he also said, your group is breaking up. Your young fellows are slipping away. And then he called Venerable Ananda. This youngster does not know his measure. Actually, so Venerable Ananda said, grey hairs are growing on my head already. You still call me a youngster. Because at this time, the Buddha had passed away. So the Venerable Ananda is of the same age as the Buddha. So the Buddha passed away at the age of 80. The Venerable Ananda was 80 or more than 80 years old already. And yet, Venerable Kassapa called him Samanchai, Silo, Ginakia, small boy like that. Friend Ananda, it is just because you wander around with these young monks who are unguarded in their sense faculties, immoderate in eating and not devoted to wakefulness. One would think you were wandering around trampling on crops. One would think you were wandering about destroying families. Your retinue is breaking up, friend Ananda. Your young followers are slipping away. But still this youngster does not know his measure. So when Venerable Ananda objected, he purposely said the same thing again. Then the nun Tulananda heard, this is another nun, Tulananda heard. Master Mahakassapa has disparaged Master Ananda, the Videhan sage, by calling him a youngster. Then being displeased at this, she expressed her displeasure thus. How can Master Mahakassapa, who was formerly a member of another sect, think to disparage Master Ananda, the Videhan sage, by calling him a youngster? Stop here for a moment. Here he says that Venerable Mahakassapa was formerly belonged to another religious sect. Actually, this is not true. The Venerable Mahakassapa overheard the nun Tulananda making this statement and said to the Venerable Ananda, surely, friend Ananda, the nun Tulananda made that statement rashly, without consideration. For since I shaved off my hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and went forth from the home life into homelessness, I do not recall ever having acknowledged any other teacher except the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. In the past, friend, when I was still a householder, it occurred to me, household life is confinement, a path of dust. Going forth is like the open air. It is not easy for one living at home to lead the perfectly complete, perfectly purified, holy life, which is like a polished conch. Let me then shave off my hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and go forth from the household life into homelessness. Sometime later, I had an outer robe made from patches of cloth. Then, acknowledging those who were arahants in the world as models, I shaved off my hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and went forth from the household life into homelessness. When I had thus gone forth, I was travelling along a road when I saw the Blessed One sitting by the Bahuputta shrine between Rajya Gaha and Nalanda. Having seen him, I thought, If I should ever see the teacher, it is the Blessed One himself that I would see. If I should ever see the Fortunate One, it is the Blessed One himself that I would see. If I should ever see the perfectly enlightened one, it is the Blessed One himself that I would see. Then I prostrated myself right there at the Blessed One's feet and said to him, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One is my teacher. I am his disciple. Venerable Sir, the Blessed One is my teacher. I am his disciple. When I had said this, the Blessed One said to me, Kassapa, if one who does not know and see should say to a disciple so single-minded as yourself, I know, I see, his head is split, but knowing Kassapa, I say I know, seeing, I say I see. Let's stop here for a moment. So when the Buddha saw Venerable Mahakassapa, he saw that this Venerable Mahakassapa was very, very advanced person. He said, here he says, so single-minded as yourself. So he said, if I'm to a disciple like you, if I'm not enlightened and I say I am enlightened, my head also will split open. So, but he says, but I am enlightened, so I say I am enlightened. Therefore, Kassapa, you should train yourself thus. I will arouse a keen sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing towards elders, the newly ordained, and those of middle status. Thus should you train yourself. Therefore, Kassapa, you should train yourself thus. Whenever I listen to any Dhamma connected with the wholesome, I will listen to it with eager ears, attending to it as a matter of vital concern, applying my whole mind to it. Thus should you train yourself. Therefore, Kassapa, you should train yourself thus. I will never relinquish mindfulness directed to the body associated with joy. Thus should you train yourself. Then having given me this exhortation, the Blessed One rose from his seat and departed. For 7 days, friend, I ate the country's alms food as a debtor. But on the 8th day, final knowledge arose. Let's stop here for a moment. So you see, when he told the Buddha that he wanted to be the Buddha's disciple, the Buddha immediately accepted him and gave him 3 instructions. One is to respect the other monks, the elders, the newly ordained, and those of middle status, to have a sense of shame towards them. And then secondly, if you hear any Dhamma, you should listen to it attentively. Thirdly, keep your mindfulness directed to the body. Having given 3 instructions, the Buddha left. Then friend, the Blessed One, then so he said, after receiving the instructions from the Buddha, he practiced very hard. For 7 days, he was not enlightened, but on the 8th day, he became enlightened. Then friend, the Blessed One descended from the robe and went to the foot of a tree. I folded in 4 my outer robe of patches and said to him, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One sit down here. This will lead to my welfare and happiness for a long time. The Blessed One sat down on the appointed seat and said to me, Your outer robe of patches is soft, Kassapa. Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One accept my outer robe of patches out of compassion. Then will you wear my worn-out hempen rag robes? I will, Venerable Sir. Thus I offered the Blessed One my outer robe of patches and received from him his worn-out hempen rag robes. If friend, one speaking rightly could say of anyone, he is the son of the Blessed One, born of his breast, born of his mouth, born of the Dhamma, created by the Dhamma, an heir to the Dhamma, a receiver of worn-out hempen rag robes. It is of me that one could rightly say this. Friend, to whatever extent I wish, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I enter and dwell in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained, etc. And similarly, he says he can enter into all the other jhana states and psychic powers, etc. Friend, by the destruction of the asvas in this very life, I enter and dwell in the taintless liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for myself with direct knowledge. Friend, one might just as well think that a bull elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits high could be concealed by a palm leaf as think that my 6 direct knowledges could be concealed. But the nun Tulananda fell away from the holy life. That's the end of the sutta. So here, you see, the Venerable Mahakassapa, he is so blunt. He says again all these things. If you don't understand him, you think he's a boaster, likes to boast of his attainments. But he has no more self. He's just stating a fact. So at the end of the sutta, it says that this nun, because she had bad feelings toward the Arahant, he also could not lead the holy life. She also disrobed. So that's all I have to say for tonight. We'll continue tomorrow. Anything to discuss? It means if a person has not become an Arahant or an Arya, then when a monk receives alms and other offerings from lay people, it is like credit card, otang. Don't deserve it, really. That's why it's very important for a person who wears the robes to practice. A lot of monks don't realize. They think just they wear the robe, they are worthy of all that offering. According to here, you are not worthy until you have become an Arahant or at least an Arya. Because once you become an Arya, you are on the way out of samsara. You definitely become enlightened, right? Or because he comes from Videha. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. He's saying at that time when the Buddha mentioned this, at the time when the Buddha mentioned this, Venerable Ananda was not yet an Arahant. So Venerable, at that time when the Buddha mentioned this statement praising Venerable Mahakassapa, Venerable Ananda was not yet an Arahant. So it could be he had not attained all the jhanas and psychic power. It could have been that Venerable Ananda could have attained 1 or 2 jhanas. But the Buddha wants to praise a monk who has all the attainments, just like the Buddha. That's why the Buddha brought Venerable Mahakassapa in front of the monks and told them to praise him in front of all the monks. I mean, there are many monks who have partial attainments, but this Mahakassapa is one of those who has complete attainment. What the Buddha has, he has. Moggallana is another one. Mahakapina, another one. Anuruddha, another one. There are many great Arahants. You see, like the sutta we read about the time when the Buddha wanted to teach the Brahma. The Buddha flew to the Brahma world and emitted bright light. Immediately, many of his chief disciples knew, and they also came using their psychic power, and they all were floating and emitted light, just like the Buddha. So actually it shows that even after a person becomes enlightened, our nature, our character, we still bring along with us. So even the Buddha himself, he has a certain character, although the books try to say, later books try to say that the Buddha is different. The Buddha is so perfect that he has no more any of his old habits. It's not true. Because you find in the sutta, there's one sutta where the Buddha really castigated the Brahmins, saying, compare them to dogs, saying that dogs are even better than Brahmins. There's one. Another thing is sometimes the Buddha sometimes likes to joke in a certain way. Sometimes there's one sutta where the Buddha came to Kapilavatthu, I think, and had to look. He came, I think, in the evening, and then he asked his cousin Mahanama to look for a place for him to stay. So Mahanama went around, could not find any place except the hermitage of an external sect ascetic. Probably he knows that the Buddha knows this external sect ascetic. Years ago they could have practiced together under the same teacher. So the Venerable, this Mahanama brought the Buddha to stay with this ascetic. Then at night, Mahanama came to see the Buddha, and the Buddha wanted to discuss Dhamma with Mahanama. So asked him a question. Before Mahanama could reply, this ascetic told Mahanama to answer in such a way. I think the Buddha was annoyed. The Buddha purposely told Mahanama answer a different way. Then this ascetic thought he must be wrong. Then he asked Mahanama to answer in the second way. And then surprisingly the Buddha asked Mahanama to answer back the first way. Did this 3 times, and this ascetic was so embarrassed. Each time he was wrong. So he malu, no face. He left and never came back again. So in a way, the Buddha still has his old character. These suttas on the Kassapa, Samyutta, although they don't have much Dhamma, they are very interesting because it shows you the character of the Arahants. Each Arahant is different in character. So if you don't understand that they are Arahants, somebody like Kassapa, if you meet him, you think this fellow is behaving like an uneducated fellow. No. You cannot say that because of him the nun disturbed. No. And the nun, because of having bad thoughts against an Arahant, so she cannot continue the holy life. Thoughts will disturb her. 12.38. Yes. I think we read one of the suttas. It says, if you do demeritorious deeds, then you go to a demeritorious rebirth. If you do meritorious deeds, then you go to a meritorious rebirth. But if you don't do any deeds and you let go, then you don't go for rebirth. But this doing deeds is only one of the conditions. The other one is like ignorance. The other one is like letting go of craving, clinging and all that. So actually you see here, these 3, what one intends, what one plans, and whatever one has a tendency towards, this is a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. But remember, in the under-dependent origination, what conditions vijnana, consciousness, is sankhara, volition. So these 3 things are the different aspects of volition. Ceteti, the first one, intending, is also a kind of volition. What you plan, pakapeti, is also another type of volition. And the tendency towards something, that means anusaya, tendency is a kind of like a craving. That is also a kind of volition. So basically, it is volition. You use your mind in any way. Eventually, you have to stop using your mind if you want to become liberated. As I said before, it's very difficult to stop using your mind because as long as you have a self, you want to protect the self. So if you want to protect the self, you keep using your mind. That's only the person who is so advanced spiritually that he has no more desire to live, no more desire for anything, then he is willing to stop using his mind. Determination, and also because his mind is not like ordinary people. His mind is so strong. Just like the Buddha says, when he's just before he passed away, he's 80 years old. The Buddha says his body is like a worn-out horse carriage. That needs to, you want it to keep going, you have to repair it here, repair it there. But the Buddha said, I don't think that my mind is like that. Buddha said his mind has never deteriorated. The Buddha said if 2 monks were to ask him question for 100 years, and he, even to the extent that he cannot get up, he must lie on the bed, he can still answer them for 100 years some more. So in other words, his mind has never deteriorated. It's only the body that deteriorates. But most of us, because our mind is not so strong, our body can influence our mind a lot. Also narrate.